Hi, so today I'm going to tell you what I learnt by having a continuous glucose monitor stuck in my arm for 2 weeks during unfueled marathon training, carbohydrate loading, and then the actual London Marathon race. As a kind of disclaimer though, I want to warn you that what happened to me might be very different to what would happen to you doing the same things. So your blood sugar might go dangerously high or crash horribly low. It's a very individual thing. I'll also tell you a bit about my experience with technology, so how it was wearing to my arm, how I could get data off it, plot graphs, and at the end, as a postscript, I'll tell you what went wrong when I tried wearing it in my chest instead of my arm. So our plan is that this is day 1, and I'll do a training marathon, fasted, completely unfueled. Day 14 will be the London Marathon, which is a race, and I'll do it with full carbohydrates, gels and everything. And also on day 12, when I carbo load, I'll find out if I get some hideous sugar rush. So here goes nothing. There's the sensor. See its needle. Gonna aim for the spot I've marked up and swabbed with alcohol and stick it on. Ooh, clunk. Didn't feel a thing this time. There we go. Yeah, that feels okay so far. Right, so I'm going to set off into the wind and rain for my training marathon. I haven't eaten for about 12 hours since last night. Just had a black coffee this morning. Blood sugar 7.1, that's actually pretty high for fasting glucose. Maybe because I've got some adrenaline going, knowing that I'm about to do my training marathon, which I think pushes things up a bit. Right, I just finished my rather wet and windy training marathon in about 3 hours 20. Still haven't hope it's had a muscle problem, but let's see what the truth is about my blood sugar. 4.9, so that's pretty normal. And actually, at halfway, it was about 9 millimoles per litre, which is higher than normal. So it actually climbed during the exercise and then subsided somewhat, but I definitely haven't gone hypo. Right, so it's been about an hour since I've come in from my training marathon. I haven't eaten or drunk anything yet, so let's see what's happened to my blood sugar. 4.3, so it stayed about the same since I finished. I haven't gone lower and lower. Okay, so 1 week out from London, I'm going to do my marathon pace test, so sort of medium long run, in a pair of Vaporflies, which I haven't worn before. I got on a sale ages ago. Just check my blood sugar. .1. So again, it's actually gone up ahead of me doing a sort of big run. It was only about 5 overnight, so it's actually sort of going up, even though I haven't had any food or any calories, in anticipation of getting some exercise. We'll see. So I'm just doing my warm-up for the marathon pace trial. Run about 5k so far, just over 7 minutes per mile. Blood sugar is still just over 8, so it's kind of staying steady. Right, just finished my warm-up for the marathon pace trial. Did 10k in just a smidge under 45 minutes. And my blood sugar is now up to 9.7 millimoles per litre, so it's gone up significantly and certainly way above baseline. And all I've done is run. Actually, I did have milk in my tea, but that was it. Right, so I've just done my marathon pace trial, 10k in 41.50, which is just a bit disappointing to be honest. That suggests about 2 hours 56 for the marathon. I thought I was in more like 2 hours 50 shape. But the glucose sensor has stopped working. It's saying try again in 10 minutes, and then it said sensor too cold, so let's hope it comes back to life. So I actually did a third 10k, but heavily overdressed. I'm wearing loads of layers now for heat acclimatisation, and the glucose monitor is back online, 5.2, but unfortunately I did get a break in the data where it sort of went really low and then there's just a gap. So it went wrong when I was doing my marathon trial, which is a bit of a shame. But overall, I suppose I'm still within a normal range, and maybe if I was in a marathon by 30k I should be thinking about gels to prop up my blood sugar a bit. So after quite a few days of low carb diet, I mean not crazy, not Atkins, not keto, but fairly low carb, now it's time to switch to a high carb diet, so I'll see if my blood sugar responds. So I've now got a huge plateful of chili, tacos and rice. So I finished my big carbohydrate dinner an hour or two ago, the first one I've had for days since before my marathon pace trial, and then had an embarrassingly large quantity of fancy raisins as well, and yet my blood sugar hasn't gone up much at all. So I'm hoping my muscles are all starved of glycogen and that's where all the sugar's going. Right, it's Friday lunchtime before my Sunday marathon, and I've been carb loading properly today, like malt loaf, Jaffa cakes, sweets, raisins, kind of funny dry biscuits, and everything low fat, high sugar. Feel slightly sick, but my blood sugar is still not too bad. It's kind of maintaining a bit of a plateau, around 6, 7, 8 millimoles per litre, but it's not going crazy, so I always worried that I was doing something bad to myself when carb loading, but seems alright. So, carbo load day goes on. I ate so many raisins and biscuits, Jaffa cakes and stuff that I felt a bit sick and really couldn't handle anymore. And my blood sugar has now dropped to 4.4 millimoles per litre, so it's actually dropped quite low. Hasn't been particularly high all day. Okay, so it's Saturday, the morning before the race. I'm just out to run a few strides, just run a mile or two, and buy some white bread, which is what I'll mainly eat today. My blood sugar has just shot up to 9.3, which is higher than at any time yesterday when I was carb loading, but I haven't eaten anything yet. So maybe that's just because I've got my adrenaline up a bit because of the race tomorrow. It's the day before the marathon. I turned my normal diet on its head. I had no fruit, no veg, no salad, avoid all fibre. I live mainly on white bread sandwiches, some sweets, a bit of protein, all refined carbs, just to keep myself topped up after the carb load yesterday, but I eat quite lightly. I just want empty guts in the morning. So I'm just making my sandwiches to take to London. 2 thick, stonking cheese and mustard sandwiches for lunch and dinner, and then for the morning before the race, a thinner sandwich with loads of marmalade. Right, so I'm on my way to the London Marathon Expo to pick up my number. On the train I had my big white bread sandwich and a 100-gram bar of nougat, and the sugar machine now says 11 millimoles per litre, which is as high as I think I've seen it, and it's gone orange to warn me it's high. So looks like if you hit it really hard with the whole load of carbs fast, then understandably the blood sugar does go quite high before it recovers later, I hope. Just arriving at Excel Centre, so it's about 15 minutes later. My blood sugar is already normal, and the little graph it's showing no longer shows the excursion it did earlier, which is a bit fishy. Okay, it's showtime. Well, I'm in the Expo, and just for once, I'm wearing the product of one of the sponsors. Right, it's had a tea time snack of about 2/3 of a 200-gram bag of sweets, and unsurprisingly, my blood sugar's gone above 10 again. Okay, so it's race morning, and this is different to all of my training runs. So I've done 5 marathons in training and other long runs, and for all of those I had no breakfast beforehand, no gels or energy drinks or anything, but on race day it's all different. I'm going to start with my marmalade sandwich, which I made yesterday. Just before the race I've got a bit of sports drink, it's about half full, with some coffee in it, and also then some energy gels to have later for sugar, caffeine and salt. So I throw everything at it during the race. Okay, I've had my marmalade sandwich, blood glucose now up to 8.4 millimoles per litre, and I'll be heading off to Greenwich Park soon for the start, which promises to be wet. Right, so I've reached my start area. I won't be carrying my phone in the race, so I'll get my sugar readings downloaded later. See you on the other side. Go Charlie! Okay, so I've just finished the London Marathon, unofficially in 2 hours 50:30, and my glucose immediately afterwards is 7.7, and that's the lowest it's been the whole race. So actually I've been really high in sugar the whole way around, so no hyperglycemia at all. Okay, so I just bumped into 1 or 2 people. I'm heading off to the pub now, but I've just had a 750ml bottle of Lucozade Sport, and my blood sugar has actually dropped, but we'll see. Okay, my blood sugar's down to 5.3 now. I've had 1 pint of beer and gonna go have a meal. Okay, my adventure with the glucose monitor is almost over. So I've done the marathon. I've got a glass of something tasty. But one last thing it can detect before it runs out tomorrow morning is that I actually saved my Easter eggs until after the marathon. So maybe I'll get one last pulse of blood sugar from those. Right, bedtime then. So I did have half of this Easter egg, which is 165 grams of dark chocolate. And my blood sugar went up a little bit, up to 7 millimoles per litre, but didn't really have a great effect considering how much chocolate I've just scoffed. So there we go. The end of my experiment pretty much. Okay, so it's time to try and take off this sensor. It was soaking in oil when I was talking to you earlier, which is a tip I got from Type 1 Talks. So it should peel off reasonably easily, I hope. Just kind of tug at the edges. Oh, I think it's coming. Yeah, not too painful. Almost off. And there we go. Right, there it is. And, oh, it does look a little bit bent, as the last one did, which I put in my chest unsuccessfully, but this one worked fine, so there wasn't a problem with it. Now, what they don't really explain with the Libre 2 device is that although you have to scan it with your phone manually to get a reading off it using near-field communications, it's actually making a reading of its own every 15 minutes, and all of that data is stored, and so the next time you scan, you get all of those data points, and you can download all of the data later from their website. It only stores 8 hours worth, so if you go more than 8 hours between scans, then you start to get a gap in your data, and the oldest data is discarded. Right, so here I am on the Abbott LibreView website. So I created an account when I got my devices, and everything I scanned from my arm or my chest got uploaded to this website. So there's a sort of summary for each device. So this is the second device, which worked 100% of the time, more or less, and the first device, which I stuck in my chest, which failed after a while, having said I was hypo, but really it was just broken. Under glucose reports, they've got all kinds of wonderful information. It's obviously aimed at diabetics, so it's mainly kind of reports about how well you managed to keep your sugar in range, things like that, various types of analysis. But for us, the most exciting thing is these daily logs. So these show during the day how the blood sugar went up and down, and these white points, not always on the line, are the individual readings I made when I scanned myself, and the blue lines are interpolated between the 15-minute data points. So sometimes, for example, my blood sugar's gone quite high, but it's in between times when I was reading from my arm, so I wouldn't have known if it wasn't for this log data. And if I just go back, we can download the data, which is really nice. Whoops. I'm not a robot. So it's just stored as a CSV file, which can then hopefully open in Excel. So this is actually quite a big file now. It's got all of my data from both sensors that I used. Let's make it a bit bigger so you can see it more clearly. So we've got some timestamps here, so starting on the 29th of March, and every 15 minutes I've got a number for my glucose. So if I just get rid of this column, which is the record type, it gives me a different column for the manual readings and the automatic readings. So we'll just select a few points to give you an idea, and then we can insert a scatter plot. And there we go, we've got a graph of our own of blood sugar versus time. So that's how I've managed to be able to display the data that I've acquired during the experiments I've done with this device. So after all that, how did the unfueled training and the fully fueled racing actually compare? Let's have a look. Right, so here I've got a graph of my blood sugar against time, and 0 is the start of running. And the two big curves here
are the blue one, which was a training marathon I did with no breakfast, no gels, no sports drinks, no nothing, and obviously took a bit longer because it was a training run and had a bit of a muscle problem as well, so I had to slow down. And then the red one is the London Marathon, where I was fully fueled, breakfast, sports drink as I started, 4 energy gels at just before 10, 14, 16 and 20 miles, and so here we've got a higher curve. So I'm just, oh, and also I've added the pace test, but when I did 30k in different sections, but unfortunately that's when the sensor temporarily died, so that data's a bit junk. So the first surprise for me is that my blood sugar wasn't actually that much higher at the start of the London Marathon. You know, all of that excitement after months of preparation, amongst all of the other athletes, I thought maybe my adrenaline would be much higher, my blood sugar would be higher, I'd had breakfast, I had a bit of sports drink, but there wasn't much in it. It was quite similar to my training run. And for the first half hour, the sugar climbed in both cases, but then things do diverge. So in my training run, my blood sugar gradually declines to just under 6 millimoles per litre. It's a perfectly normal functional level for, you know, operating. Whereas in the London Marathon, it stayed much higher, and whether it's because of taking the gels, I guess it probably is, it kind of had a second wind and went really high after about an hour and a quarter. I didn't take any energy gels until nearly 10 miles, having learnt from my training marathon that my blood sugar actually goes quite high when I start running. I didn't take one later than 20 miles because I thought there's no point in having a gel that you're still digesting when you cross the finishing line. That's why these gels are all kind of packed in so tightly. But it is noticeable that my blood sugar is dropping shortly after the last one, and you know, it's a fair bit lower by the time I hit the finish line. Having said that, my blood glucose is still 8.5 millimoles per litre there. It's still, you know, way above a normal baseline. So so the big question is, do I need gels in the marathon? And I guess the answer is probably I don't need them, that my blood sugar is, you know, perfectly fine without them. But at the same time, this kind of boosted sugar level, maybe that lets me run faster. You know, according to the central governor theory of Tim Noakes, maybe my brain judges that with all this extra sugar surging through my blood, I'm capable of doing more. Certainly I think I'll be loath to give up the gels on the basis of this. And just for a laugh, here's a picture of the whole day for the London Marathon. So my blood sugar kind of drifted down until I woke up, then it started to rise. I maybe got a boost from my marmalade sandwich. Then the race you've already seen, when my blood sugar got super high, boosted by the gels. So I finished the race, had a huge bottle of Lucozade Sport that was in my goodie bag, and my blood sugar just declined. Had a beer, still went down. Had another beer with lunch, recovered somewhat. A third pub, which is a personal best, 3 venues after the event. And again, my blood sugar stayed pretty low. And then later in the evening, even when I had my main meal, my blood sugar didn't really go up very much. I haven't got the Easter egg here, but it didn't go up too much for that either. So I guess all of the food I was having in the evening was just kind of refilling my muscles, and so my body managed to keep the blood sugar level actually down as it consumed that goodness.
So as a postscript, I'll show you how I got started with my first sensor, which I put in my chest instead of my arm, and what went wrong. Right, so this is an Abbott Freestyle Libre 2 continuous glucose monitor. So I'm just going to open this up and see what we've got inside. Thanks to Graham for this one. So that's some kind of applicator on the actual sensor, I guess. And, oh, no, maybe that's the actual sensor. And this must be the applicator for getting it onto me. So I've just read the instructions. Just need to peel the lid off the sensor pack. Oh gosh, it's pretty stiff. Then unscrew the lid from the applicator. and line up the dark marks. I suppose those are the dark marks. And push down firmly. Oh. And lift it out. And it's ready to go. So I don't know if you can see there's this kind of sharp needle in there, which is going to go in me. Right, here goes. I'm pretty skinny as a marathon runner, so I haven't got much spare fat, so I hope this doesn't hurt too much. Seemed alright. Can feel it, but... So I'm just running to work, and as soon as I started running, there were a few twinges of pain from the sensor, so maybe it went through my skinny fat and into the muscle a little bit, but it seems to have settled down now. So I ran 10 miles on the way to work, and I tried to make readings during that run, and the thing stopped working. I got scan errors. Apparently that can be because of the temperature, and I did just get a successful reading once I'd been at work for a while. 5.9 millimoles, so a little bit down, but not much really after the run. Okay, it's Sunday today. It's supposed to be my first long run wearing the glucose monitor, so I could tell if my blood sugar drops in those last few miles of a marathon, for example. Whether gels really matter, really interesting stuff like that. Unfortunately, the sensor is still not giving me proper readings. It's either reading so low I should be in a coma, or just saying error. So either it's figured out that officially it had expired, or maybe the sensor needle's broken off inside me. It is feeling a bit sore, so I think I'll have to give up on this one and maybe get myself a different sensor for the London Marathon. Right, so I'm going to try and get the sensor off. I followed another tip from Type 1 Talks, and I've soaked the adhesive disc in oil. And I've been kind of gradually working it free. So I hope it'll come off without too much trouble. There we go. And, oh, the needle is still there, but maybe it is very slightly bent at the end, so maybe that's not good. So maybe that's why it wasn't working.